Hello, welcome to At the Edge of Knowledge. I am Professor Atila Yüksel. In this series, we will explore the spirit of research not as a technical process, but as a journey of consciousness. Beginning with being and becoming a researcher, an expanding consciousness perspective, we will discuss how the act of inquiry transforms not only what we know, but who we are as knowers. Each episode will open a new chapter in this exploration, questioning how researchers grow, awaken, and expand their awareness through the very process of seeking truth. So let's begin with the great illusion, how modern research is betraying its promise. We grew up believing that science was our highest truth, that somewhere in a sterile lab or a sunlit university office, someone in a white coat or behind a stack of papers was quietly saving the world. That's the myth, the beautiful illusion we were taught to worship. But today, if you walk through those same corridors, listen closely, you can hear the cracks in the ivory tower, the sound of anxiety disguised as ambition, the quiet despair behind the matrix of excellence, and the growing sense, whispered over coffee, written between the lines of polite journals prose, that something has gone deeply, existentially wrong. This episode is not a complaint, it's an autopsy, and maybe, if we are lucky, the beginning of a resurrection. The human cost. Let's start with the most uncomfortable truth. The problem isn't the system. It is the people trapped inside it. Research today runs on human fuel, curiosity, persistence, imagination, but the engine is misaligned. Instead of nourishing these qualities, academia drains them. We call it publish or perish, but what it really means is perform or vanish. A young scholar enters the field full of questions, but within a few years, they are no longer asking what's true. They are asking, what will get me published? The grant proposal replaces the hypothesis. The brand replaces the breakthrough. And somewhere between the application portal and the next conference, the idle knowledge quietly dies. This isn't just about stress or overwork. It's a moral inversion. We build a system that rewards visibility over veracity, speed over depth, certainty over curiosity. It doesn't take long for that to shape the soul of the researcher. You start chasing outputs. You write papers you don't believe in. You cite friends and reviewers instead of the thinkers who actually inspired you. And the terrifying part, you call it career strategy. That's not a strategy, that's survival. And survival is not science. Let me talk about the machine that rewards the wrong things. Every illusion needs a mechanism. A machine that keeps the trick running. Ours is the on metrics, the impact factor, the H index, citation counts. They were supposed to help us recognize good work. Instead, they became the good definition of good work. We stopped asking what is true. We started asking what is measurable. The result? A feedback loop so powerful that it doesn't just measure behavior. It creates it. Papers becomes products. Ideas become marketing assets. Journals become factories producing the same thing over and over again under new titles. We call it productivity. But it's really entropy disguised as achievement. Metrics, of course, give the illusion of fairness. Everyone can be counted, ranked, compared. But when everything becomes countable, nothing becomes meaningful. And so we flood the system with mediocrity. Thousands of articles no one will ever read, written to meet quotas no one believes in, reviewed by exhausted peers who skim for compliance instead of substance. It's not just inefficient, it's tragic. Because behind each of these papers is a human being who once cared. and talk about scientific fallout. Now becomes the part no one likes to admit. This broken machinery doesn't just waste time, it produces bad science. Let's call it what it is. The great credibility collapse starts with the selectivity crisis. When carriers depend on publishable results, failure becomes a liability. So what do? We cherry pick, we message data, we bury inconvenient outcomes, not necessarily to deceive, but to survive. Then comes the replication crisis. When others try to repeat our findings, they can't. Sometimes because the same sample was small. Sometimes because the original result was a fluke dressed up as discovery. And sometimes, let's be honest, because no one really checked. And then the retraction crisis. We frame retractions as evidence of self-correction, but they are really the visible tumors of deeper disease, proof that the peer-reviewed immune system is overwhelmed. Each of these crises feeds the same beast: pseudoscience, wearing a lab coat, elegant statistics, complex jargon, perfect formatting, but hollow inside. Studies that are technically flawless and conceptually meaningless. Science becomes theater. Truth becomes a performance. And what we produce, in the end, is not understanding. It is the illusion of understanding. So, if we talk about the grand deception, here is the most insidious part. The machine doesn't stop, it doubles down. Every new paper, every flashy headline, every breakthrough press release keeps the illusion alive. We call it novelty, but novelty isn't the same as progress. We have confused being first with being right. We have mistaken statistical significance for actual significance. A p-value below 0.5 is treated like a moral victory even if the research question itself is trivial. It's like confusing the brightness of a firework for the warmth of the sun. And so, the system spins faster. More journals, more papers, more innovation. Each cycle louder, brighter, emptier. We have created a spectacle of discovery that dazzles the public and deceives ourselves. Universities issue press releases about game-changing findings that quietly fade into irrelevance months later. Researchers inflate their abstracts with buzzwords: AI, sustainability, neuroscience of happiness, just to keep their work visible in the algorithmic flood. And the saddest part, it works. The illusion is convincing. The grants keep coming. The headlines keep glowing. And the truth keeps disappearing. And what about the crisis of relevance? When a system loses its integrity, it eventually loses its purpose. Science was supposed to serve humanity. But what if it now mostly serves itself? Look at the social science, my own backyard. How many studies have truly improved the human condition? How many have changed how we live, think, or care? We produce endless findings about motivation, identity, or happiness. Yet societies grow more anxious, polarized, and lonely. It's as if we are mapping the forest while forgetting we are part of it. This is the crisis of relevance. When a discipline forgets who it's for. When research becomes a language only researchers can read. When the ivory tower becomes a mirror chamber, reflecting our cleverness back at us until we mistake it for right. We talk about evidence-based policy, but how much evidence is actually believed? Public trust in science is eroding, not because people hate facts, but because they can sense the performance. They see the dissonance between our rhetoric and our reality. So, what now? What can possibly fix a machine this broken? Not another reform, not another dashboard. What we need is something far deeper, an epistemic reckoning, a recognition that science is not as a mechanical process but a moral one, that every spreadsheet, every peer review, every publication is a reflection of consciousness, the awareness, honesty, and humility of the mind behind it. Because the integrity of science begins with the integrity of the scientists. We must recover what the system has forgotten, that discovery is not just a technical act, it's a spiritual discipline. It demands patience, it demands doubt, it demands a kind of inner silence in which the world can actually speak back to us. Real science begins when ambition ends. It begins when we stop asking, how do I publish this? And start asking, why does this matter? When we realize that the question, is it significant, should never refer to the p-value but to a human truth. Science and conscious science may be the next frontier of research. Isn't outer space or quantum computing? Maybe it is inner universe, the consciousness of the researcher. Imagine a scientific culture that measures growth not by output, but by depth of awareness, where mentorship includes not just method, but meaning, where metrics track integrity, curiosity, and humility, the true engines of discovery. This isn't utopian, it's necessary, because if we continue chasing the illusion of progress, we will wake up in a world where science is everywhere and truth is nowhere. But if we dare to stop, to reflect, to rehumanize the act of knowing, we might yet rediscover what science was always meant to be, a form of love, disciplined, patient, devoted attention to reality. So here is the question I leave with you. Are we researchers or performers? Are we advancing knowledge or animating its corpse? Every time we publish without purpose, every time we chase citations instead of clarity, every time we gain the metric instead of facing the mystery, we participate in the illusion. But every time we pause, question, and dare to be honest, even when it costs us, we had reality breathe again. Science doesn't need saving. It needs remembering. It needs us, the humans behind the data, to remember why we began. Because we were curious, not because we wanted careers, because we sought understanding, not applause, because we believed that truth, no matter how inconvenient, was still sacred. If we can remember that, truly remember, then the cracks in the ivory tower won't be signs of collapse. They will be openings, windows through which light can finally enter again. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and never confuse visibility with truth. Thank you.